the Aquarion and the Forgotten. Ancient and powerful, known for their amphibious nature and dominance of the seas. To better understand their stories, we must first go back to the time of the ancient Civil War, where their fates were decided. Long, long ago, in Polytopian history, there were the Ancients, the first tribe. They expanded across the square, grew proud, cracked down on dissent, and eventually fractured into a bloody civil war from which they never recovered, destroyed by the rebels they attempted to suppress. From here, the rebellious groups further split, migrated, and developed into the tribes you see today, ranging from the traditional Chinchi to the near-alien Illyrian. One band of Polytopians believed a war of this magnitude would never break out again if only someone could steer the Polytopians away from global conflict. This is the primary driving purpose of the Aquarion, who considered themselves a peacekeeping force dedicated to keeping the bloodshed to the barest where they could. They fled to the oceans, eventually creating water outposts and using magic to accommodate themselves a bit more to their new aquatic home. It was decided that it was much more effective to sit back and subtly steer Polytopian kind instead of a more active approach, lest they be deemed a threat themselves. At some point in their long history, the Aquarion decided that being above the water would only make it easier for the land-based tribes to find out what they were doing. So they pulled all their outposts back to their capital and sank to the bottom of the ocean. Maybe then they could oversee the shores from relative safety. Of course, the Polytopians are a testy bunch, so relative peace was never going to last. Yes, small skirmishes were common over the ages, but this new war was different, as all the tribes were involved. So, after centuries of lying dormant, the Aquarion emerged from the deep, here to save Polytopians from themselves, and restore peace once again. The Aquarion firmly believe that it's their duty to bring about peace at any cost, for the sake of future generations, even if that means killing, pillaging, and locking up their opponents for the supposed betterment of all. Well, that's their history and why they entered the war, but what else is there to learn about the Aquarion? Even before the centuries spent at the bottom of the ocean, the Aquarion underwent a gradual but mystical transformation, magically kickstarting their evolution into something a bit more suited for their environment, gaining gills, fins, and other features that make swimming and life in the water possible. The most obvious change is the addition of a giant mermaid tail, where you would normally find legs. This allows the Aquarion to be masters of swimming and navigating in aquatic environments, while also being able to make their way up on land. Granted, they're not very mobile on land, but they can get around well enough to be effective soldiers. The capital city of the Aquarion rests in the Ikopo Reefs, an area chosen for being easily defendable should the need arise. The landscape is partially submerged with plenty of large pink coral reefs jutting out of the water, a meshing of sea and land, perfect for the Aquarion who can utilize both. The most common animal here is the Termalon, a hard-shelled creature that's both amphibious and a far faster swimmer than the average Aquarion soldier, making them useful as mounts for their cavalry. The Termalon is so useful to the Aquarion that much of their art and architecture is inspired by them, as even the monarch sits on a Termalon-shaped throne. The most iconic appearance of the Termalon in the Empire is the brigades of elite trident-throwing Tridentians, which enforce Aquarion naval superiority. The Aquarion Empire is steadfastly protected by the powerful crabs, colossal behemoths that serve as their guardians. A pact was signed long ago between the Aquarion and the crabs, who also felt threatened by the tribes on the land, so the two groups strive towards a future where they both mutually benefit. Beside the mighty crabs, the Aquarion have allied with some of the other denizens of the ocean, including sharks, puffers, and jellies, all who are happy to assist in the preservation of their aquatic home. Much like many of the other tribes, the Aquarion are a monarchy, ruled by a royal family. Socially, the common Aquarion are a rather friendly people and welcoming to outsiders. But higher-class citizens often consider the other tribes as wayward children in need of saving from themselves. Their long time spent watching the other tribes has given the Aquarion a good understanding of foreign cultures, and they use these skills to initiate peaceful interactions with the other tribes when they can, often preferring diplomacy over killing if given the choice. That doesn't stop them from brutal subjugation of their opponents or waging war on more belligerent tribes, as the Aquarion justify it as a necessary means to an end. Whether or not the slaughtering of opponents is a worthy justification for peace is up to you. So then, who are the Forgotten, and how do they tie into this story? As was stated earlier, the Aquarion sunk beneath the waves in order to keep a closer watch on the land-dwelling Polytopians while in safety. One outpost didn't get the memo, and after not receiving orders for a while, started to believe that the Aquarian Empire collapsed and that they were the last of their kind. Despite being stationed in the swampy and generally inhospitable Ritiki marshlands, this forgotten outpost has been diligently trying to uphold the Aquarian mission for centuries. As the current war for the square broke out, the Forgotten also emerged to ensure peace, using warfare and diplomacy to hopefully bring an end to the war, as that was their chief obligation. The plethora of factors which caused the great conflict are far too great for a single group to fix and prevent, but that didn't stop the Forgotten or the Aquarion from trying. Maybe things could have been different if they worked together over those centuries. Of course, with both groups of Aquarion having coincidentally emerged around the same time to stop the global war, it was inevitable for them to meet each other. Initial discovery of the other was met with mutual surprise, excitedness, anger, confusion, and a myriad of other emotions. Even though the Forgotten were elated to discover that they weren't the last of their kind, they're still furious at the other Aquarion for abandoning them so long ago. The mainline Aquarion couldn't care less about the Forgotten, and consider them little more than another player in the conflict that potentially needs to be kept in check if they get in the way of the mission. Politically, the Forgotten consider themselves just as much the Aquarion as their fishy counterparts. They've been carrying the banner, maintaining the culture, and performing the mission just as much as their salmon-colored cousins. Both groups consider themselves the rightful successors of the Aquarian Empire, and that the other is a mere pretender for one reason or another, even if they both admit the other is biologically and politically related. Despite sharing the same goal and heritage, the two groups look at each other in disdain and suspicion, still unsure of what to think of the other. Lasting peace between the two factions isn't impossible, but for now, it's a fragile alliance they could shatter at the first sign of betrayal. Much like the mainline Aquarion, the Forgotten have also evolved to better fit their surroundings. Instead of mermaid tails, they gained legs that more resemble a squid or octopus. Instead of termalons, the marshlands are home to crocas, aggressive reptilian mounts with a penchant for biting anything they can get their mouths around. Giant toads have taken the place of the mighty crabs as the primary guardians, and octus have replaced the jellies, their distant relative. Since the split between the two groups happened long after the Aquarian had established their culture and tactics, you'll see many of the same elements between them, such as the use of tridents, trade posts, and bubbles. And so, the tale of the Aquarion and the Forgotten serves as a reminder that even the most peaceful of intentions can lead to unexpected consequences. As guardians of the square, they sought to protect their world from repeating the past, yet found themselves entangled in the very struggles they hoped to avoid. The question remains, will the tribes of the square ever break free from the cycles of conflict, or is the path to peace always paved with war? Until next time, keep swimming, keep your fins sharp, and your waters calm.